Bob and Mary had been together for 20 years, a milestone that felt both monumental and fragile. They'd met in their early 20s, two bright-eyed dreamers with a shared knack for laughter and late-night talks. 4 kids later, Jake, Lily, Sam, and little Emma, their bustling home in a quiet suburban neighborhood was a testament to the life they'd built. Bob ran a small engineering consultancy, a business he'd nurtured from late-night sketches at the kitchen table into a steady operation. Mary, once an aspiring illustrator, had chosen to stay home, pouring her creativity into raising their kids and keeping the chaos of their household in orbit. The years hadn't been a straight line of bliss. There were golden times, family camping trips where Bob taught the kids to fish, Mary sketching by the firelight, all of them laughing until their sides hurt. But there were rough patches too, lean months when the consultancy teetered, sleepless nights with colicky babies, and the slow drift that crept in as Bob's hours stretched longer. He'd always been driven, proud to provide, but lately, his focus had tipped too far. Late nights at the office became the norm, and Mary found herself alone with the kids more often, her resentment simmering like a pot left too long on the stove. She missed him, the Bob who'd sneak up behind her in the kitchen, twirl her around, and steal a kiss before the kids could groan. Now, their conversations were clipped, practical, schedules, bills, who'd take Sam to soccer. Intimacy, once a spark that lit up their days, had faded to a flicker, then nearly gone out. Mary felt it keenly, a quiet ache she couldn't name until Bob noticed too. One rainy Tuesday, he came home earlier than usual, his tie loosened, exhaustion etched into his face. He set his bag down and looked at her, really looked, and said, "Mary, what's happening to us?" She froze, the dish towel in her hands twisting tighter. The question cracked something open, and suddenly they were shouting, about time, about love, about everything they'd buried. "You're never here," she yelled, tears spilling. "I'm doing this for us," he shot back, voice raw. The kids retreated upstairs, doors clicking shut. It ended with Mary storming out to the porch, rain drumming on the roof, and Bob staring at the wall, wondering if this was the end. The next day, Mary drove to her friend Jen's house, still shaken. Jen, a single mom with a sharp tongue, poured coffee and didn't hold back. "Leave him, March. You're not his maid, you deserve more." Mary nodded, half convinced, but the words felt heavy, wrong. Later, she met her oldest friend, Claire, at a park bench. Claire listened, then laughed softly. "You're silly, you know that? He's out there busting his ass for you and those kids. He's not perfect, but he's still your Bob. You think you'd find better out there?" Claire's words stuck, needling at Mary's anger until it softened into something else. Driving home, Mary thought about Bob, not the late nights, but the man who'd built Emma's crib by hand, who'd cried with her when Jake broke his arm, who still left her goofy notes on the fridge when he remembered to. She'd been so wrapped up in what was missing, she'd forgotten what was still there. That night, she found him in the garage, tinkering with a project, his shoulders slumped. She stepped in, hesitant. "Bob, I'm sorry. I've been unfair. I miss you, but I know you're trying." He looked up, surprised, then softened. "I miss you too. I didn't realize how far I'd let it slip." They talked, really talked, for hours, no yelling, just unraveling the mess. They made a plan. Bob would cut back on late nights, delegate more at work, Mary would carve out time for herself, maybe pick up her sketchbook again. It wasn't a fix overnight, but it was a start. Over the next months, they rebuilt, small steps, like date nights at the diner, or Bob surprising her with coffee in bed. Mary joined a local art class, her confidence blooming, and Bob made it home for dinner more, the kids noticing the difference. The intimacy crept back too, tentative at first, then steady, a touch here, a laugh there, a quiet night tangled up together. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, stronger for the cracks they'd mended. 20 years in, Bob and Mary found their way back to each other, not just as parents or partners, but as the two dreamers who'd started it all.